We seem to exist in an era of exquisite curation. Our lives, meticulously filtered and presented, unfold like carefully edited highlight reels, each frame polished to gleaming perfection. We sculpt personas with the precision of master artisans, refining narratives until they gleam with impeccable virtue, projecting an image of seamless, effortless grace. This is the grand performance of the modern self, a relentless pursuit of the ideal. Yet beneath this shimmering veneer, beneath layers of meticulously constructed composure, a primal tremor often stirs, a dissonant note in the carefully orchestrated symphony of our perfected selves. It is an untamed, uninvited surge of irritation, a flash of visceral disdain that ignites within us with startling ferocity when we encounter in another precisely what we have so diligently, so mercilessly suppressed within ourselves. Consider the public sphere, now digitized and amplified, where righteous fury erupts like a geyser from the collective unconscious. Observe the swift, surgical condemnation, the collective gasp of moral outrage, the almost ritualistic anathema that descends when someone dares to embody a trait we have exiled from our own inner realm. Perhaps it's the audacious ambition that refuses to apologize for its hunger, the unapologetic self-assurance that occupies its space without permission, the raw, unbridled vulnerability that exposes its wounds without shame, or the sheer audacity of living in the world without seeking approval. It's as if your meticulously constructed inner citadel, your scrupulously curated museum of acceptable qualities, suddenly encounters a rebellious artist, a brazen vandal. This bold figure, with a flick of the wrist, splashes vibrant, chaotic graffiti onto the pristine canvas of your carefully maintained identity, marring the flawless masterpiece you've perfected your entire life. And this vandal, this unwelcome mirror, reflects not their flaw, but the very essence you have banished to the deepest, most shaded chambers of your being, a dungeon guarded by shame and fear. This is not merely dislike. It's a profound, almost spiritual aversion, an allergic reaction of the soul. It is the ego's involuntary recoil from a truth it has forbidden itself to acknowledge, a truth that threatens to dismantle the very foundations of its meticulously constructed reality. Yet, paradoxically, it is within this recoil, this burning indignation, this uncomfortable reflection, that a forgotten map to your deepest strength lies hidden. For what you most vehemently condemn, what you most fiercely reject in the outer world, is often precisely the quality, the very power, the vital life force you have disowned, locked away, and labeled dangerous, unacceptable, or unworthy within yourself. But why does this complex, often painful mechanism operate with such relentless precision? Why do we become such zealous architects of our own internal prisons, meticulously erecting high walls around essential parts of our innate nature with such unwavering conviction? What primal fear compels us to sever these vital connections, to amputate aspects of our own being? To truly unravel this enigma, to navigate the labyrinthine depths of the human psyche and understand the genesis of this self-imposed exile, we must journey back to the genesis, to the very first whisper of judgment, the initial tremor of shame, the subtle social conditioning that began to shape the invisible contours of your hidden self. This journey is not merely an excavation of the past. It is an awakening to the possibilities of the present. Within each of us lies an invisible line, a watershed beyond which remain the fragments of a once whole self. We are all born with the fullness of potential, with an untouched spark of authenticity, with a natural right to manifest ourselves in all our multifaceted glory. But then a process begins, subtle and often imperceptible, yet ruthless in its methodical nature. At what moment, at what point on your path did you first sense that something within you, that very spark, that impulse, that living untamed force was undesirable, inappropriate, or at times even dangerous? Recall how the thirst for knowledge, the drive to reach peaks, the natural desire to be first, to fully express yourself, was labeled as pride, selfishness, or worse, naivete, for which you would surely be punished. How the ability to assert your boundaries, to protect your space, your truth, not by destroying, but by affirming, not by suppressing, but by demonstrating resilience, was branded as rudeness, aggression, disrespect for elders or decent people. How the natural right to make mistakes, to be imperfect, to embark on a path of trial and error, to take a bold yet clumsy step into the unknown, was transformed into a mark of shame, irrefutable proof of your inadequacy, your foolishness, or your incompetence. How the nakedness of feelings, the sincerity of experiences, the ability to be open to the world and to pain, to be vulnerable in your truth, was perceived as weakness, as an invitation to attack, as a cause for shame to be hidden deep within. These were not isolated incidents, but a continuous chain of whispers, glances, reprimands, subtle hints, and direct prohibitions. Lessons absorbed with mother's milk, with the air of society, with every line of books read, and every frame of films watched. The world around us in the form of parents, teachers, peers, and then broader cultural narratives methodically taught us that to be good, accepted, loved, successful, it was necessary to cut off, suppress, and hide those parts of ourselves that seemed inconvenient, too much, not enough, or wrong. We learn not only to suppress, but also to be ashamed of these parts, to see them as flaws that needed to be eradicated. And so these exiled qualities, the fervor of desire, the courage to be wrong, the audacity to be vulnerable, the right to anger and to assert oneself, to ambition, to sincerity, did not vanish. They did not dissolve into oblivion, nor evaporate into the air. Instead, they were locked away, banished to the most secret dark corners of our inner world, into that invisible dungeon we spoke of earlier. They became part of our shadow, a living, breathing, but unseen force, a repository of everything we deemed unacceptable in ourselves, that which we rejected for the sake of conformity. We learned to be convenient, predictable, and to meet expectations. We learn to mask our true strength with humility, our deep ambition with feigned modesty, our raw pain with indifference or false optimism. We became virtuosos of self-deception, honing the art of self-suppression to perfection. But what is the price of this adaptation, this constant internal control, this perpetual game of being good? The price is the loss of wholeness, chronic fatigue from the need to pretend, and alienation from our own sources of energy, intuition, and authenticity, which could be our greatest gifts. This story is not just your personal drama. It is archetypal, universal, threading through the fabric of human experience across centuries and cultures. It lives within each of us, and its echo continues to resonate in every unexpressed energy, every suppressed impulse, every forgotten call to our true selves. And understanding this echo is merely the first step toward its liberation. But where does what we so diligently hide go? That which has been banished from the light of consciousness does not dissolve into nothingness, nor does it vanish like morning dew carried away by the wind. On the contrary, it settles in the depths of our being, forming an invisible yet powerful tribe, a community of traits, desires, and impulses exiled from the conscious realm. We ourselves become their wardens, holding them captive to maintain an illusion of wholeness before the world, and more terrifyingly, before ourselves. This is a voluntary exile, self-imposed, and an irrational drive to conform to some internal or external norm, a fear of being rejected by our personal or collective tribe. We amputate parts of ourselves to fit in, to be right, to avoid hypothetical condemnation. However, this energy, deprived of its natural outlet, does not disappear. It accumulates like an unpaid bill, accruing daily interest. It is not merely a debt, it is a living, pulsating force that cannot be destroyed, only suppressed. And one day, this bill will come due. The invisible debts of our self manifest in the most unexpected forms: irrational outbursts of anger, inexplicable anxiety, obsessive condemnation of others, self-sabotage, illness. Every irritation we feel, every surge of contempt for others' perceived flaws is merely an echo of our own exiled qualities. Knocking from beneath the surface, it is the energy of an unpaid bill that, left unintegrated, is projected outward, painting in others the deformities we have so carefully turned away from within ourselves. Recall Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Robert Louis Stevenson's poignant, timeless metaphor. The scientist striving to separate good from evil within himself, to isolate only the pure and bright, merely spawned a monster embodying everything he had so diligently repressed. Hyde is not just a villain, he is the quintessential unpaid debt of Jekyll to his own shadow, an energy that, when locked away, mutated and burst forth with destructive force. This is the archetype of how the suppressed doesn't just exist, but grows in its underground, gaining power until it breaks through the thin veil of decorum, destroying everything in its path. Hyde is the embodiment of our collective blindness to our own deep impulses, to those aspects we deem too dark, too dangerous for integration. This universal dynamic means that the images which evoke the most burning repulsion within us, the characters who seem to embody everything unacceptable, are often merely mirrors reflecting fragments of our own exiled essence. They are not simply objects of our annoyance. They are beacons pointing to those aspects of our inner world that yearn to be recognized and integrated. We have already touched upon how the finest threads of rejection, woven from shame and the fear of being cast out, form the invisible cells within us where we banish parts of ourselves. But how does one discern what exactly is imprisoned in these hidden chambers of the soul? Often, our internal jailer betrays itself through mirrored abysses, through those who evoke in us an irrational, burning hatred, contempt, or inexplicable irritation. This is not merely a dislike for another's personality. It is a pulsating wound, exposing our own exiled qualities. Gaze into the shadows that dance at the periphery of your consciousness when you encounter them. There is the unstoppable showman, the one who unashamedly takes up all the space, basks in the limelight, flaunting their achievements, whether on social media or in life. Their self-assurance borders on impudence. Their joy in their own success seems vulgar to you, and their need for recognition repulsive. You wince when they receive another round of applause and inwardly seethe at their self-satisfaction. In them, you see the embodiment of everything you forbade yourself: the right to be seen, the right to be proud of yourself, the right to declare your desires without regard for others' approval, your own ambition, your yearning for recognition, your desire to be heard. All of this was once neatly packaged and locked away, lest it appear too much. And now, looking at the showman, you feel something more than mere dislike. It's the poisonous ivy of envy, intertwined with anger at your own self-limitation. Then there's the unbridled rebel, the one who lives by their own rules, ignoring norms and conventions, audaciously scoffing at authority and established ways. They might be a slacker, an artist, a rootless traveler, or simply someone who refuses to play by the rules. Their apparent irresponsibility, their freedom from obligations, their unwillingness to fit into boundaries provoke a storm of indignation within you. You condemn them for their lack of discipline, their disregard for public opinion, for being not like everyone else. But behind this condemnation lies your own longing for spontaneity, for true freedom, for an unwillingness to submit to others' expectations. Perhaps you once dreamed of shedding shackles yourself, but chose the path of order and predictability. And now their wild dance is a silent reproach to your own suppressed wildness. And finally, the intolerable pleader, the one who openly displays their vulnerability, cries in public, seeks sympathy, asks for help without a shred of shame. They might be someone who constantly complains about life, seeks attention for their suffering, or simply isn't afraid to be weak. Their candor seems manipulative to you, their whining unbearable, and their dependency repulsive. You are irritated by their inability to pull themselves together, their apparent helplessness. However, this reaction is merely a reflection of your own fear of being vulnerable, your forbidden need for support, your pain that you long ago learned to hide behind a mask of strength and independence. You yourself once cut off your right to weakness, and now the sight of another's exposed pain evokes in you not empathy, but a deep, sometimes uncontrollable repulsion. Imagine Alexei, a successful middle manager. His days are scheduled to the minute, his speech polished, his suit impeccable. He prides himself on his discipline and rationality. But there's a colleague in his office, a certain Maxim, the unstoppable showman. Maxim is perpetually late. His desk is cluttered with drawings and strange gadgets, and his presentations are veritable performances, full of jokes and eccentric ideas. He's always the center of attention. Clients love him despite his slight sloppiness. Alexei can't stand Maxim. Every time Maxim receives praise, Alexei feels a pang of burning irritation. Incompetent, a buffoon? How does he get away with it? He thinks, watching Maxim effortlessly win over people without, it seems to Alexei, putting in any effort. Alexei despises him for being unserious, for his showmanship, for his ability to be the center of attention. He doesn't realize how deep inside he longs for the same freedom of self-expression, the same light-hearted approach to life, the same ability to be himself without fear of judgment. These phantoms striking us with an irrational wave carry more than just a shadow. Behind the veil of repulsion lies something else, an echo of something lost, something that was once an integral part of us, but was banished to the deep basements of consciousness. These beacons, ignited by our inner storms, point not only to what we have rejected, but also to what we have lost by exiling it to the dungeons of consciousness. Behind each of these frightening masks, behind every phantom that evokes irrational repulsion within us, hides not a malicious demon, but a distorted reflection of a vital, untapped power. This is not a curse, but a sealed gift that we ourselves have forbidden ourselves, severing an invisible contract with our own soul. Consider the unstoppable showman whose craving for attention and self-presentation stirred a dull irritation within you. What if behind that flamboyant facade lies not mere vanity, but your own trampled right to visibility, your right to occupy space, to shine, to be heard and noticed not only within narrow confines, but in the full breadth of your manifestation? This is not just ambition, but a magnetic energy capable of inspiring, leading others, and filling the world with your unique light. By exiling the showman, you deprived yourself of the opportunity to fully present yourself to the world, locking your voice within the four walls of modesty, whereas it was born for thunderous roars and the whisper of stars. You forbade yourself from being one who sees and is seen, one who is not afraid to stand on the pedestal of their authenticity. Or take the unbridled rebel whose spontaneity and disregard for rules seem provocative and reckless to you. Behind their audacious smile lies your own freedom, chained by conventions. This is not chaos, but a primal creative force, the ability to dismantle outdated structures and erect something new, authentic in their place. It is the right to self-determination, to reject imposed roles, to rebel against everything that stifles your uniqueness. By exiling the rebel, you not only suppressed your wild, untamed nature, you cut off your path to radical authenticity, to the courage to follow only the call of your own heart, to that inner strength that allows you to set your own rules and create your own reality. You deprived yourself of the right to be one who breaks boundaries and forges new paths, one who is not afraid to be different. And finally, the intolerable pleader whose vulnerability and need for support evoked discomfort or even contempt in you. Hidden within their desperate plea is your own rejected need for intimacy, for true human connection. This is not weakness, but the deepest strength, allowing one to be authentic, open, and paradoxically unconquerable in their vulnerability. It is the right to support, to accept help, to be candid about one's feelings and needs. By exiling the pleader, you erected a wall of self-sufficiency around yourself, depriving yourself of deep exchange, of that precious experience when hearts meet in true, undistorted empathy. You forbade yourself from being one who feels and who allows themselves to be seen in their true nakedness, one who is not afraid to lean on another. Each of these demons is merely a guardian at the gate to your true power, a distorted echo of what was once your inherent right and most valuable capacity. And as long as these gifts remain locked in the dungeon of the shadow, their unexpressed energy will continue to manifest in your life, no longer as strength, but as a source of invisible obstacles and recurring patterns, holding you back from authentic flourishing. We have spoken of phantoms, of dark reflections that haunt us from within, of those very demons, the unstoppable showman, the unbridled rebel, the intolerable pleader, who were banished from the temple of our consciousness. But allow me to pose a question that will pierce the very core of your resistance. How does your fear of being like these demons, like these exiled parts of yourself, compel you to make decisions that are not only disadvantageous, but also detrimental to your own path toward wholeness? Imagine you stand at the threshold of profound self-knowledge. The door to the shadow lies open before you, yet every step inward feels like a betrayal of the ideal image you have so meticulously constructed. If the unstoppable showman, the one who yearns to be heard, who possesses the gift of gab and the ability to inspire, lurks in your shadow, you might unconsciously avoid any public expression of your insights. You will read dozens of books on Jung, absorb knowledge, but never dare to share your revelations, give a lecture, or write an article. The fear of being perceived as an upstart, as someone merely seeking attention, will compel you to lock this gift away. And so you, a potential guide for others through the labyrinths of the soul, remain in the shadows, and your own path to understanding the shadow slows. For true knowledge is often born in exchange. Or perhaps your inner unbridled rebel, the one who rejects dogmas and strives for freedom of thought, has been deeply imprisoned. In such a case, while studying the concept of the shadow, you might unconsciously adhere only to generally accepted, safe interpretations. You will avoid provocative ideas, sharp questions that could lead you to genuine, nonlinear breakthroughs in self-understanding. You will follow authorities fearing to question their words, for to rebel means to risk being rejected, to be inconvenient. This fear will prevent you from truly delving deep into your own unique manifestations of the shadow, as this requires the audacity to cast off external frameworks. And what if the intolerable pleader, the one who needs support and vulnerability, was exiled by you? Then when encountering difficulties in working with your own shadow, and this is inevitable, for the path is thorny, you will refuse help. You will stubbornly ignore the possibility of reaching out to a therapist, a mentor, or even a trusted friend to share the burden of your discoveries. Pride, masquerading as self-sufficiency, will not allow you to admit your need for guidance. And this refusal of support, of vulnerability, will condemn you to wander alone in the darkness of your own psyche, where every misstep can lead to stagnation or even regression. Look at these scenarios. Isn't a paradox hidden within them? The fear of becoming bad renders you ineffective, trapped, incapable of genuine growth in the very area meant to liberate you. You fear becoming a demon, but it is this very fear that makes you its slave. And here arises the sharpest objection. But I don't want to be a selfish showman, a destructive rebel, or a perpetually whining pleader. Does accepting the shadow mean I have to become like that? No. Allow me to dispel this fog of misconception. Shadow integration is not a capitulation to its base manifestations. It is not permission to become the worst version of yourself. On the contrary, it is the realization that these qualities, these energies already exist within you. They haven't disappeared. They are merely distorted, locked away, and precisely for this reason, they manifest in destructive forms through self-sabotage, through irrational outbursts, through invisible chains that shackle your potential. The True danger lies not in acknowledging these parts, but in denying them, for that which is denied controls you from the shadows. To integrate the shadow means to bring these energies into the light of consciousness, to understand their primal impulse, and to transform it. The unstoppable showman becomes a charismatic leader, the unbridled rebel, a fearless innovator, the intolerable pleader, the capacity for deep empathy and healthy relationships. It's not about becoming a demon, but about reclaiming its power and transforming rusty chains into gold. For it is not only what we reject that forms our shadow. There's another dimension, another mirror that reflects our treasures, undeservedly given to others. We have spoken of the shadow as a repository of all that is rejected, of those inconvenient qualities that we repress into the dark depths of our being, fearing judgment or rejection. But what if the shadow is not only a basement where our demons languish, but also a treasure trove where our most radiant facets are buried? What if we project not only what we hate in ourselves, but also what we consider too great, too beautiful, too powerful to be our own? Imagine you meet someone whose self-confidence is dazzling, whose creativity bubbles with an inexhaustible flow, whose capacity for deep empathy seems boundless. You freeze, struck with awe and admiration. And in this admiration, there's an almost religious reverence. You think, wow, what talent, what power. I wish I had that. But within this, I wish I had that, lies a subtle, insidious trap. For at that very moment, you may have inadvertently gifted that person your own golden shadow. The golden shadow consists of the same repressed aspects of personality, but these are perceived as exceptionally positive, brilliant, desirable. These are talents, abilities, potentials that for some reason we haven't dared to embrace within ourselves, haven't allowed to flourish. Perhaps in childhood we were taught that being too noticeable, too ambitious, too free was dangerous or unacceptable. Perhaps we saw others suffer from envy when displaying their gifts and decided it was safer to keep our light hidden. And so when we see this light embodied in someone else, we project onto them our unrealized power, our unrevealed beauty, our unsung anthem. We elevate them to a pedestal, turning them into idols, and simultaneously deprive ourselves of the opportunity to realize that this light is our own. Consider, who is your idol or the object of your deepest admiration in the context of the qualities you most value in people? It might be an outstanding orator whose speech flows like a song, or an artist whose vision of the world profoundly moves you. It could be a leader whose inner strength can move mountains, or a healer whose heart seems like a bottomless ocean of compassion. Which of their specific qualities evoke this trembling awe in you? Now ask yourself the most uncomfortable question. What are your own talents? What are your unrealized abilities? What are your hidden diamonds that you have gifted to this person, refusing to acknowledge them as part of yourself? When we project our golden shadow, we become spectators of our own lives, not their creators. We applaud others' achievements instead of unleashing our own. We see potential in everyone but ourselves. This is not just admiration. It is a surrender of our own greatness. We are, in essence, telling the universe, this is too good for me. Let someone else have it. In this act of refusal, we lock away our most precious gifts, leaving them deep within the golden shadow, waiting for the day we dare to embrace them. This process, whether it's the repression of dark or golden aspects, keeps us in a state of fragmentation. It deprives us of access to immense energy that could be the driving force of our unique destiny. But what if it were possible to reclaim these loaned out treasures? What if you could not just recognize them, but integrate them, transforming them into a living, active force in your life? True freedom isn't about severing anything that seems imperfect, nor is it about imprisoning inconvenient qualities within the soul. It is about gathering all your parts into a cohesive whole. This is not a surrender to the base, but an alchemy of the spirit, transforming the lead of rejection into the gold of awareness. Your strength lies not in being a flawless phantom devoid of shadows, but in being an authentic whole being capable of encompassing the full spectrum of human experience. The time has come to reclaim what has been loaned out to external images, projected onto pedestals of idols, or cast into the hell of judgment. This is your energy, your power, waiting to come home. How do you begin this journey of return? Start with observation. Take a piece of paper, your journal, or simply dedicate a few quiet minutes, allowing your thoughts to flow freely. Recall who in your life evokes the strongest, almost irrational emotions, be it burning irritation, deep-seated envy, or conversely dazzling, almost painful admiration. Don't rush. Allow these images to appear like actors on the stage of your consciousness. Now, next to each name or image, write down the specific quality that so strongly captivates you in that person. Perhaps it's their unapologetic directness, their unbridled ambition, their demonstrative vulnerability, or conversely, their unwavering composure, their incredible talent, their charisma. And now the most important step, ask yourself a question. If it's a quality that irritates or repels you, when have I exhibited this quality myself, or when have I suppressed it within myself, felt ashamed of it, or feared being like what I see? If it's a golden projection, a quality that inspires admiration, when have I felt this within myself but not allowed it to manifest? How could I use this energy now if I embraced it as my own rather than as someone else's distant dream? This is not a search for blame. It is a search for truth. It is the beginning of a dialogue with those parts of yourself that you have exiled, with those energies that were severed and are now knocking from the subconscious through the mirrors of other people. This is merely the first tentative step into the labyrinth of your own subconscious towards opening doors that have remained locked for so long. We have only just lifted the veil on what hides in the secret corners. But what if these phantoms, these shadows, are not enemies at all, but merely distorted reflections of colossal, unused power? How do we begin not just to observe, but to interact with them, transforming them from a threat into a source of infinite energy? The path to wholeness is not a sudden epiphany, but diligent effort, and each subsequent step on this journey reveals new facets of who you truly are, allowing you not just to exist, but to truly live in the fullness of your manifestation.